Bonjour tout le monde. Pour la classe, il était très important d'être ici aujourd'hui pour apporter notre support inconditionnel aux étudiants et aux étudiantes de l'Université de Concordia, ainsi qu'à toute la communauté universitaire de Concordia qui, malheureusement, depuis le tout début du conflit actuel, fait face à une attitude intransigeante et antidémocratique de la part de son administration. Une attitude qui est difficilement compréhensible lorsqu'on la compare aux attitudes qu'ont eues d'autres administrations universitaires et collégiales qui généralement ont accepté de reconnaître la grève qui a été démocratiquement votée en Assemblée générale par les étudiants et les étudiantes. Donc la classe est ici ce matin tout d'abord pour témoigner de son appui aux demandes des étudiants et des étudiantes et pour avertir également l'Université de Concordia et son rectorat que la classe va venir supporter toute action qui va être entreprise par les étudiants et les étudiantes de Concordia pour faire reconnaître leurs droits de grève, leurs droits de manifestation et leurs droits de piquetage autour et à l'intérieur du campus.
Merci. On va passer à Gabrielle Bouchard, qui est étudiante en Women's Studies ici à Concordia. So she's a student here in Women's Studies.
J'aimerais commencer par remercier Gabriel et Jeanne de leur présence ici pour plusieurs d'entre nous. Le support des étudiants d'autres universités au Québec est extrêmement important. L'Université Concordia vit sa première grève et pour nous autres, c'est important d'avoir des gens qui ont d'expérience, qui ont déjà vécu ça et qui ont une culture de la grève pour être capables de nous aider dans ces premiers pas-là que nous faisons. Nous vivons présentement un moment important pour l'éducation postsecondaire au Québec. Depuis plus de 2 mois, dans plusieurs cas, les étudiants et étudiantes du Québec ont décidé de montrer leur opposition au plan de financement des universités proposé par le gouvernement en participant à un mouvement de grève. Et pour la première fois de son histoire, les étudiantes et étudiants de Concordia ont collectivement, lors d'assemblées générales départementales, décidé de participer à ce mouvement. Mais notre situation est particulière ici à Concordia. Depuis le début, nous vivons ce mouvement de contestation dans un contexte où aucune mesure significative n'a été prise par l'administration de l'université. Nous vivons un déni de notre mouvement de grève et des votes démocratiques. Nous faisons face à une injonction institutionnelle. L'université nie par sa politique de business as usual l'importance du temps de classe pour la réussite des étudiantes et étudiants de Concordia. Pour certains départements, ce temps de classe manqué représente plus de 40 % du temps de classe. L'université, par sa politique de déni, est aussi en opposition avec la position officielle du CREPUC qui, encore ce week-end, assurait qu'aucun compromis ne serait fait sur la qualité de l'éducation. Pour nous, 40 % de classes manquées a un impact certain. C'est pourquoi nous demandons que l'Université Concordia cesse cette politique de déni du mouvement de grève par la mise sur pied d'un plan d'action détaillé en consultation avec les délégués de chaque département concerné afin d'établir un calendrier pour la reprise des cours et des examens, la remise des travaux et la soumission des notes. De prolonger la session d'hiver au-delà du mois d'avril, de repousser conséquemment la session d'été et de prolonger les contrats des auxiliaires d'enseignement et des professeurs à temps partiel afin que de maintenir à leur niveau habituel de fonctionnement les services universitaires tels que les horaires d'ouverture des bibliothèques, les services de soins de santé, d'orientation professionnelle, ainsi que les résidences. Nous demandons aussi de s'engager à être flexible dans la forme que prendra la reprise des cours. Les étudiantes et étudiants de Concordia refusent d'être mis en marge du mouvement et s'opposent à ce manque de respect flagrant et répété envers la culture de grève étudiante québécoise, envers l'intégrité académique de l'université et envers le bien-être des étudiantes et étudiants. Merci.
Is Tom McGurk. He's the president of Geography Graduate. Donc, c'est Tom McGurk, le président des étudiants et étudiantes en géographie du 2e cycle.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm really happy you're here to participate in this press conference. Speaking as a student and as a striker, I think it's important to point out that this is really a national movement for Quebec. And Concordia, for the first time, is making history by joining in the fight for accessible education in Quebec. Concordia, via its democratic processes based in student associations and student unions, voted and continues to vote in favor of striking. The admin's response to this has been one of denial. Denial amounting to an institutional injunction. Denial of our collective right to organize and vote. Denial that class time is critical to learning. Denial of the culture of Quebec related to the accessibility of education and the student movement. Contrary to what the admin would have you believe, this is not affecting a small number of students. Many students have missed class. In geography, planning, environment, my department, there are over 1,100 students enrolled, and classes have been disrupted since April 5th. Nearly 40% of our class time has been missed. Our response to the administration's plan for finishing the semester is that coursework is indeed integral. It's important. It's an important part of learning. The university's response in and of itself is contrary to its own mission statements and policies. The admin's business-as-usual attitude does not address student need, viewing those who will be impacted as acceptable losses, little more than bean counting. This did not need to happen. The admin failed to act early on. It underestimated the students' resolve and responded not by working with students, but by trying to be punitive and attempting to squelch the process early on. The consequences, they now find themselves in a difficult situation. They have dumped the end of semester responsibilities in the laps of the professors and students. Whilst professors can certainly find creative solutions and alternative grading schemes, they've given them no option for delivering the needed course material. They have offered a solution, but they have not offered a plan to achieve it. In conclusion, we call upon the admin to reevaluate the proposed plan to finish the semester, carefully consider the suggestions we have put forth, respect the process and the culture of Quebec, and stop marginalizing the student movement at Concordia and across the province. In closing, I would say if we allow this to stand, we're playing by the rules that the government wants the university to play by. And if this keeps up, this is what we can expect to see in the future. More and more stonewalling, more and more business as usual, and an end to a democratic process that has given Quebec a unique place in North America in terms of education and accessibility. Thank you very much.
For our coalition, it was very important to be here today to show our full and complete and unconditional support to the students of Concordia, to the student associations of Concordia, who are members of our coalition. And we wanted also to warn the administration of Concordia that if they continue in their business as usual attitude, I think the tension will go up on the campus, and our coalition and our militants will be there on the campus to help the students, to help the strikers in order to make their democratic mandate of strike respected. And also, I think the attitude of the Concordia administration is totally different from a lot of attitudes that were adopted by CEGEP and university administration since the beginning of this conflict. The vast majority of them have chosen to respect the democratic vote of strike who were taken by the students. The vast majority of the university administrations have already began to work on plan de reprise des cours, in order to make sure that the courses will be retaken this semester, will be extended, in order to make sure that the quality of education won't be affected by the strike. Those plans are negotiated between the administration, the professors, the employees, and the students, and I think there is absolutely no reason why Concordia would not take this path, why Concordia would not respect this process that has done his proofs everywhere in the other campuses of CEGEP and universities. So basically we're here to say that we support them and that we'll be side by side with them, and if they want to make sure that their strike mandate are respected.
Do you think maybe the difference in reaction from the administration at Concordia, maybe because they've never dealt with something like this before?
Well,
historically it is the
I think they can call the administration at UQAM and ask them for counsels. I mean, the fact of not being, I mean, the fact of not being used to a situation where there is protest on the campus is not an excuse to ignore the democratic right to have a vote, to vote a strike, and to make sure that this collective choice is being respected by everyone. So it is not an excuse, and no one will accept that as an excuse. I mean, in a lot of CEGEP, in a lot of universities, the strike of this year is the first in their history, and everywhere people have worked together to find a way to make sure that the strike is respected and that the quality of education is respected. And I think Concordia has the duty, as a university, to make sure that those two ingredients are together.
The challenge now for you may be to continue this boycott with no classes going on. How will this movement keep gaining momentum with sessions coming to a close?
Well, I think the fact that sessions are coming to a close is more our pressure that we put on the government than the opposite. I mean, since the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've seen more and more voices raising and asking the Ministère de l'Éducation to find a way to solve this conflict. We've seen the touristic industry raising its voice. We've seen administrations from CEGEP and universities raising their voice. I mean, even people who are in favor of the tuition increase ask for the same thing. They all ask the government to open a dialogue with us, to accept to negotiate, not on financial aid, on the issue, on the main issue of this strike, which is the tuition increase.
But this tactic doesn't seem to be working because there are no negotiations.
Well,
is there any way that you might decide to change your strategy, go to the table, despite the fact that they're not addressing what you want, and then maybe work that way?
Well, 2 weeks ago, Madame Bouchard and Mr. Bachin were saying that the bonification of financial aid was done, and that there would be no further bonification. And 2 weeks after, we saw last week opening the door a little bit. So I think that if we make our strike continue for, I think, maybe 2 or 3 weeks more, the government won't have the choice. I mean, they will have to deal with a totally catastrophic situation on the campus, and they will have to open the door to negotiation. And if we see the evolution of the discourse of the liberals since the beginning of this conflict, you know, after the first day of strike, they were saying that they would never even recognize the strike. Now they are not only recognizing it, but they made already a first offer to try to solve the conflict. The bad news for the liberals is that yesterday there was 15 votes in CEGEP and universities, and 14 of them decided to continue the strike and to refuse the offer of the government. So they have the choice. In fact, they have no choice. They have to negotiate with us right now.
You talk about wanting the university to make concrete plans and address your practical concerns about class time. How practical is it for you? I know you have support among some faculty, but there's a lot of faculty here. How practical is it for you, and do you have their support to ask all these people to sacrifice their family time and their sabbatic leaves and their research projects and their planned vacations, all those things to continue class time? Is it practical? Is that really going to work? Have you spoken to them?
Your question is very important, and especially because of the context we're in right now and the fact that there has been a denial of this movement since the beginning. And I agree with you that there are some things that have to be discussed, and that's why we're asking that this plan be done as a joint venture. We want to be part of it. We want faculties to be part of it. We want to see how, at this particular moment in the strike movement, we can make things different and make things better. 40% of classes. And it doesn't really matter if it was people on the picket line or people who could not access classes. It's 40% of some classes that could not be made. Now, how can you honestly ask those people to write exams, write paper, and know what they're supposed to know if those classes are not done? If you don't have the support from your professors to be able to learn the way you're supposed to learn. So do I have a solution? I don't. And I don't think it's my place, my personal place, to have a solution. But I do think that it's important that we work together to actually try to figure out a Concordian way to make this happen. Does that answer your?
Sure.
I'd actually like to speak to that.
Like, over?
I can speak for my department, which is Geography, Planning, and Environment, where we do have fairly wide support amongst faculty. The chair, not so much, but a lot of the faculty do. And in a meeting that we had earlier on this year, we presented our response to the government's funding plan. And it opened the eyes of a lot of professors. And one professor in particular said, you know, I'd rather be inconvenienced for the next 4 to 6 weeks or 3 to 4 months than to have to live under a funding plan as bad as this one. Concerned about the privatization of research, concerned about the elimination of programs that don't necessarily, are not necessarily money makers for the university. In other words, he's concerned about his long-term abilities to work in the field that he wants to work in. So I think there is a fair amount of support among profs to do this. Not all, but I think we need to ask them what they're willing to do and what we're willing to do to help alleviate the situation. But to assume that a vast majority of profs are against us or are in favor of this funding plan is not, okay. Okay, yeah, I understand.
Because you brought that up in your own discussions about how you have children and families, and so it's fair all your faculty do as well.
Absolutely. But I'm reasonably sure, at least in my department, and I'm guessing this is true in other departments, that they're willing to make some sacrifices for this. If they truly believe this plan is not a good plan and that the way we're going to fund education is going to hurt them eventually, it's in their own best interest to be put out for a little bit. Also, I need to clarify something. I said something earlier. I said we've been on strike since April 5th. It was March 5th. That's my error. I apologize.
If I can add something, I mean, profs in Concordia don't have more or less life than the other profs in the other universities. I mean, everywhere people have worked together to find a way to respect the strike mandates and to assure quality of education. At UQAM, at Université de Montréal, and all the universities all over Quebec, everyone has found a way to work together. So that there's absolutely no excuse why in Concordia it would be different. It's everywhere people have found a way, so there is no excuse for Concordia to be different. And if there is a reason, well, maybe the administration should tell us. Maybe, because honestly, we don't see it now.
I'd like to know what are some of the threats or fears that a lot of the students are facing. We've heard about the whole incomplete, there have been people asking students to file for incompletes for their classes. Could you give us more details on
Last week, the Dean of Art and Science, and I think also the Dean of Fine Art, asked professors or gave professors potential solutions to try to make sure that students wouldn't fail their classes or fail their semester, because I think that it was one of the main concerns, or the one that was expressed the most. And incomplete, which is this possibility of saying that you haven't finished your classes and we're giving you a month or a few weeks more to be able to finish your work, finish your final paper and stuff like that. That's one of the solutions that have been put forward. But we want to go beyond that, because that is still within a framework there where there is no recognition of the class time missed. So even if those potential solutions might work for any portion of the student body, it will not work at large. It will not work as a whole. It doesn't address the fact that 40% of class time has been missed. So and would 40% of class being retaken work for everybody? We don't know. But because we haven't sat down with anybody, because we haven't had this conversation and we haven't had this discussion, we don't know if it's going to be, if it's feasible or not. We need to have that conversation. And even yesterday's town hall, where we met, with Professor Dr. Mr. Lowy, President Lowy, was not satisfactory, because even though we addressed the ground or the basis for why we're doing this, the fact that this funding plan is not a solution for the put forward underfunding of university, even if we say that, you know, people will be affected by this financial plan, even if we put those forward, you know, there was no significant response from the university. So we're still saying we need to have that conversation. Part-time faculty have to be part of this conversation. We need to be able to voice those opinions or voice those concerns that people have about extending the semester or not, or making up classes. We don't know because we haven't had that conversation, and that's what we want.
It seems like the administration has been doing a lot to, in a way, punish the students that have been on strike. Are there a lot of the experiences that have already been related, but I imagine many more, are basically sort of relating this fact, and I feel like it's important for students to be able to have their voices heard. To what extent are students' voices being heard, considering these town halls and so on?
I would say they're not being heard very well at this point. I mean, yesterday at the town hall, this is the first chance that we've really had to interface with the president in a kind of official way, and it was a 1-hour meeting, and they were really reluctant to extend that. They were only going to allow a certain amount of time for students to speak, and basically it was nice that they did it, but it's a little bit too little, too late. And in terms of the incomplete issue, there's also the aspect that there's almost a punitive aspect to that related to primarily undergrads who would be taking the brunt of the incomplete, is that there's a $20 per mark or per course fee when you have an incomplete. And that starts to add up when you have 4 or 5 classes. So this is also an issue that, you know, everything seems to be around squelching the movement as opposed to finding ways to find a solution to this particular problem. As I said, they provided us with what they think should happen, but they provided us with no plan other than let your professors and students take care of it on their own.
What we said since the beginning of this strike was that no semester had never been canceled, but semesters were extended. Well, each time there has been a student strike in history, so that it was the case in 2005 when teachers at UQAM did a strike of 8 weeks. The semester was extended also. So the majority of the administration of CEGEP and universities are used to deal with student strike and are used to plan the extension of the semesters in collaboration with the faculty and with the student association. So the only difference is that the strike being longer, there's going to be maybe a little bit more work to do, but the basic plan is the same, which means you take course by course, see what needs to be done, what exams, what papers need to be done, and you negotiate with the student association a way to take back the learning for each course one by one. And it's a long work, but people in the majority of universities are used to do it, and I have no doubt that when the strike will end, people will sit together and will find a way to make sure that people have a good diploma at the end of the semester.